The courtroom went silent, each tick of the clock sounding like thunder. Months of struggles, betrayals, and shattered promises had culminated in this one moment, when the judge entered, clutching the folder that held Kody Brown's destiny. Everyone knew life for the Browns would never be the same anymore. Hey everyone, welcome back to Reality Recap, Order in the Court. The judge's voice cracked through the room like a whip, crisp and unrelenting. The sound reverberated off the paneled walls, striking against the marble pillars, piercing the low rumble of voices in an instant. Each head in the courtroom swung toward the man sitting at the defendant's table, Cody Brown. The cameras had once loved him. America had seen his blonde locks shine in the cameras of reality television. His bright smile had reassured his wives, his soothing voice guaranteeing harmony in times of suffering. But today, that charm was gone. Today his jaw was clenched, his hair more disheveled than normal, pieces falling into his face as he leaned in. His fingers interlocked so tightly his knuckles turned white. This wasn't some snug family drama shot in a living room. This was an actual courtroom. No retakes, no editorializing to smoothen out the corners, and the stakes had never been higher. The air itself was thick, as if every breath weighed the years of decisions, words, and consequences unto that moment. The smell of wood furniture and the musty smell of aged paper and ink, the smell of spaces where forever decisions were made. In the back row, journalists hunched shoulder to shoulder, notepads filled, pens poised. Each flicker of Cody's face was noted, written down as if treasure hunters tracking clues. And the gallery wasn't occupied with strangers. Sister Wives fans had come out. Faces Cody didn't know, but they knew his well enough. They murmured among themselves, guessing, judging, some eyes burning with sympathy, others with contempt. Camera shutters broke the low hum, despite video having been prohibited. Photographers were only allowed a brief pass in prior to trial commencement. White explosions flashed across the room, capturing every wrinkle etched on Cody's face, every shadow beneath his eyes. Outside the courthouse was pandemonium. Protesters fought with supporters, signs held aloft, justice for the wives. Family before fame, leave Cody alone. Their voices nodded into a cacophony of noise, loud and clashing. Satellite trucks crowded the streets, satellite dishes pointed upward, broadcasting each second to the country. Some had waited since morning, hoping for a spot inside, just to catch a glimpse of the man who had become part of cultural discourse, half reality television star, half controversy, half mystery. Cody hardly stirred inside. His attorney leaned in close, speaking in hushed tones too low for anyone else to hear. Cody nodded once, expression impossible to read. Years of being on television had schooled him in the art of concealing feelings, but hints of tension still crept through. The clench of his jaw, the restless drumming of his foot, the way his eyes glided over the gallery briefly before looking elsewhere. He knew who might be seated somewhere among those seats. He knew that someplace in that room were the faces he used to call family. The judge, iron-haired and stern with bun-tied hair, fixed her gaze on Cody and adjusted her glasses. She did it slowly, deliberately, as if to remind everyone in the room that this was not a place for personal sentiment, either in or out. Cody swallowed uncomfortably, his throat parched. For a brief moment, his mind flashed back years ago, when he and his wives had stood side by side smiling for paparazzi photos after the airing of Sister Wives. They had appeared united then, at least that is what the world saw. He recalled late night conversations at the kitchen table, meals eaten together, children's giggles filling the house. He recalled the pride he had felt when, convinced that they were demonstrating to America how love came in many shapes and sizes, they had declared that family and religion were invincible. But then came the screaming matches. The estrangement. What had started as personal cracks burst out into public scandal, and now it had all culminated here. All rise, the bailiff's voice boomed, snapping Cody out of his reverie. All rose at the entrance of the judge. Her robe floated gently as she ascended the bench, gavel clutched in hand as if it were an appendage of her power. Please be seated. The wooden benches groaned as the crowd sat down. The judge's gaze scanned the room before focusing on the papers in front of her. Her voice was controlled, but beneath was an edge that let no one question it. This court did not play games. This court is now in session, case of Brown versus Brown. Et al., the words hit like a blow. Kody had known for months what this case would entail, but to hear it spoken out loud, shrouded in bureaucratic lingo, made it inescapable. Brown versus Brown, a name once equal to family, was now the rallying cry of a courtroom war. When the clerk started reading the case synopsis, Kody looked to the side. His lawyer was deep in papers, intent and precise. On the other side of the aisle, the opposing attorney sat opposite towering piles of papers, faces resolute, their expressions betraying little. Kody's gaze moved further away, towards the area where witnesses and parties involved sat. His gut churned. There they were, the very faces he once trusted blindly. The ones he loved, not for the cameras, but in the quiet, private moments at home. Some evaded his eyes. Others looked at his eyes for only a split second before immediately glancing away. The judge's pen clicked sharply in the air. Before we continue, I want everyone to remember, this is a court of law. There will be no emotions. There will be no disruptions. Any disruption will lead to one's removal from this courtroom. The warning was general, but Kody felt it personally. This was not the world of reality television where feelings made ratings. Here, feelings could destroy you. He breathed slowly, trying to calm down. A strange thought crept into his mind. This isn't just a trial. This is the last episode of a show I never wanted written. For the first time in years, he had no clue how the story would end. The judge brought her gavel up, the wood glinting in the overhead lights before she let it drop with a loud crack. This court is now in session, she announced. The echo rang out. Conversation ceased. Pens paused mid-word, and Cody Brown, husband, father, television personality, defendant, now sat silent, eyes fixed ahead as the weight of the moment crushed him like stone. The initial ripple in this tempest had surfaced months earlier, teeny, almost imperceptible. A dispute regarding lines of demarcation, a late payment, an offhand comment during an interview that hit a raw nerve. But, as with most cracks in a family, it hadn't been the spark itself. It was that the spark had been perceptible enough for people outside to see. Personal conflicts boiled over into public disagreements. The debating turned from what was happening to whose version of the event would be accepted. On Twitter, veiled innuendos and strategic placements presaged trouble brewing. Sister Wives fans picked apart each shot, searching for cracks. And then the floodgates opened. What had started as controversies over land, Coyote Pass most of all, turned into accusations. Claims of promises broken, assets withheld, contracts disregarded, promises made in trust and then forgotten in silence. What had once been a family united by common conviction and vision of oneness had divided into two sides of a legal battle. And now here they all were. Every bond, every promise, every handshake agreement to be picked apart like evidence at a trial. The witnesses will now be called, the bailiff declared Christine Brown. Slowly, Christine stood, her face serene, yet her eyes contained their own tempest. Passing Kody, she didn't even look his way. She didn't have to. Years spent living with him had given quiet between them a volume greater than voice. On the witness stand, she put her hand on the Bible and swore to be truthful. The examiners started off easy dates, history setting, but it quickly cut to the quick. Did Mr. Brown ever guarantee that the Coyote Pass property was going to be divided equally among all of the spouses? Yes, Christine replied firmly. And to your knowledge, has that happened? Number not as promised. Her words dropped heavy into the silence, like stones into water, each one sending ripples outward. Next came Meri. If Christine's testimony had been steady and resolute, Meri's carried a quieter edge. Pain lived in her voice, even as she kept it even. She avoided Kody's eyes until a question left her no choice. Mrs. Brown, in your understanding, were financial decisions made collectively? The attorney asked. Meri hesitated, long enough to cause the gallery to lean forward. In theory, yes. In practice. She allowed the silence to fill in the rest. Not always. Her voice didn't crack, but the pressure of held-back frustration throbbed through every sentence. And then it was Janelle's turn. She was quick, businesslike, like facts, Where Christine had been tearful and Meri guarded, Janelle presented numbers, deadlines, agreements. To your knowledge, Mrs. Brown, were funds from joint accounts used for purposes not agreed upon by all spouses? Yes, several times, answered Janelle brusquely. Her responses were crisp and to the point, and she never took her eyes off Kody as she testified. Lastly, Robyn was summoned to the witness stand. Her testimony brought a different kind of gravity with it. She was the wife who had stood by Kody most in recent years, the one most likely to defend him. But the whole courtroom leaned forward, eager to hear what her words would say. Even loyal friends can crack under the oath. Mrs. Brown, did you see any property decisions made without the knowledge of the other parties? Robyn's eyes darted to Kody, then to the attorney. Not in the way it is being described here, she replied guardedly. It wasn't exactly a denial, but neither was it a clear defense. By the time the last wife testified on the stand, the entire mood had shifted. The courtroom wasn't raucous, no yelling, no pandemonium, but tense, electric. Each of the testimonies had added another layer to the tale, another way of seeing what had transpired. And the more layers piled onto the story, the more apparent it became. This was not merely a matter of land or funds. This was about trust. And trust, once shattered, doesn't simply break like a twig. It shatters, fissuring into jagged pieces that continue to cut long after the fracture. The gallery responded in waves. Some viewers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others wrote frantically in notebooks. A woman in the second row shook her head, speaking in a hushed tone to the person next to her after Christine testified. From the back of the room, a man growled, "Knew it!" when Janelle testified. This was not now simply a legal matter. It had become an enactment, a raw, unplanned performance of the Browns' off-camera existence, reenacted in sworn testimony and cross-examination. From his seat at the defense table, Kody fought to keep his expression still, but every testimony struck like a blow. Christine's conviction, Meri's quiet hesitation, Janelle's sharp facts, even Robyn's careful words. Each one was a reminder of how far they had drifted from the dream they had once built together. He could still see it in his mind's eye, the first day on the property at Coyote Pass. The sun down low in the sky, kids running through withered grass, everyone with a vision of where their houses would one day be. It had seemed like the beginning of forever back then. Now, the same land was at the center of a lawsuit. The lawyers attempted to ground the proceedings in contracts, deeds, and figures, but the emotions kept creeping in. A catch in someone's voice, a change in tone, a glance across the room full of unspoken history. Every sworn statement wasn't simply testimony. It became part of the family's narrative, now etched into the public record for strangers to analyze. And for the first time, the Browns weren't just living their lives on television and switching on. They were living it with a judge whose decision would determine its fate. By recess time, the atmosphere was more tense than it had been in the morning. The bailiff called for recess, and bodies shuffled out. Some got their legs stretching out, others got coffee, a few ducked out for fresh air. Kody remained seated longer, his hands folded tightly in front of him. His attorney leaned forward, whispering. Kody nodded, but his eyes never left the witness stand, now vacant, but ringing with each testimony spoken that day. This wasn't completed, not even close, and as the family settled into their own corners of the courthouse, it was clear. The next testimony could be more explosive than anything heard thus far. The bailiff's voice boomed, "Mr. Cody Brown, please take the stand, for a second." Kody did not budge, not because he had not heard, but because he knew. This was the pendulum's swing. No longer the man sitting quietly while others talked about him. He was the center now. He stood up slowly, smoothing out the wrinkles in his suit jacket with firm hands that still quivered slightly. As he came towards them, his shoes squeaked quietly against the floorboards. He sat down at the witness stand. The Bible was set in front of him, and he laid his hand on its smooth cover. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth?" the clerk asked. "I do," Kody said firmly. At least on the surface. The direct examination commenced. His lawyer, a serene fellow with silver-framed glasses, came forward. "This was the amiable phase, Mr. Brown," he started smoothly. Let us begin at the start. Describe to the court what your vision was for your family when you and your wives embarked on this journey in the first place. Cody took a breath, allowing his mind to wander back. Years, even decades. Right from the start he explained our aspiration was unity. We wanted to work and live together as one family to support each other. It wasn't just about love, it was about faith, about creating something greater than ourselves. He talked of times in the beginning, the midnight conversations at kitchen tables, the joy of adding new children, the manner in which they shared what little they had so everyone could be provided for. Something we had to do, Cody explained, his voice becoming warmer. We lived plain so that we could put away for the future we envisioned. We trusted one another. We bet on that trust. His lawyer nodded. And at that point, did you think that the financial choices you were making were for the best of your family?
Yes, Cody replied resolutely. Always. Every decision I made was with the goal to maintain what we had created. For a brief moment, Cody almost resembled the man from the earliest Sister Wives seasons. Confident, passionate, convinced of his purpose. But then came the cross-examination. The opposing counsel stood up from their chair. No warm smile there. This was a person who had picked apart Cody's every interview, every paper, every line of accounts, looking for defects. They approached with deliberate pace, a folder crumpled in their hand. Standing at the podium, they raised her eyes, leveling hard stares at Cody. "Mr. Brown," the attorney started, tone courteous but underlaid with steel. "You testified just a moment ago that you made every financial decision you made in the best interest of the family. Is that right?" "Yes," Cody replied. The attorney unclipped the file. "And isn't it also true that in March of 2019 you bought land with joint family money without checking with all your wives?" Cody's jaw clenched. "I don't remember it that way. I think the problem was talked about." The lawyer's eyebrow rose. "Talked about? With all your wives?" A hesitation. "Not with everybody at the same time," Cody conceded. Silence hung before the lawyer continued. "So, that's a no." "It's not yes or no," Cody replied. "We had continuous talks. Not every individual was there every time." The questioning picked up steam, the pace accelerating. "Mr. Brown, isn't it correct that you vowed Coyote Pass would be split equally between all your mityams?" "That was always the plan. Yes," Cody replied guardedly. "And isn't it correct that, to this day, that split has not occurred as vowed?" Cody's lips compressed. "We've had setbacks. The plan is still yes or no, Mr. Brown." A muscle twitched in his cheek. "No, not yet." The gallery shifted forward. Even without talk, the atmosphere became thicker, heavier. This wasn't questioning. This was planning, each question built on the next, painting a picture of Cody as one who acted alone, not together. "Isn't it true you took money out of a joint account to pay for work on a property in your name alone? A property which was initially intended for the family?" Cody started. "Yes, but that was—" "Thank you," the attorney interrupted, stopping further explanation. The interruptions weren't mistakes, screws up as he sometimes called them. They needed to be. Small but effective battles that left his responses incomplete, dangling in ways that sounded incriminatory. Cody attempted to remain consistent, but the constant rhythm did not leave room to catch breath. This wasn't a television interview he could control. Here, rules of evidence restricted him to plain things, removing storytell. There were past texts generated, referencing without group agreement. Emails were read out aloud, years old, exposing disagreements swept under the carpet. Every time Cody attempted to explain, the lawyer's tone clicked in. "Mr. Brown, answer the question directly." The gallery drank in each word. Pens scribbled wildly. Some glanced at one another when some answers hit hard. Christine's hands neatly folded in her lap, expression tranquil though inscrutable. Janelle sat back, listening carefully. Meri gazed down at the floorboards. Robyn's eyes held to Cody, jaw clenched, as though trying not to let him falter. Then the turning point. "Mr. Brown," replied the other attorney, looking at the last page, You've sworn in court that everything you did was in your family's interest. But we've heard of decision-making without agreement, promises not kept, holdings managed without complete openness. So I'm going to ask you simply, do you think each member of your family still trusts you entirely? The question dangled like a hammer in midair. Not legally piercing, but intimate, cutting more deeply because of that. Cody's mouth fell open, then shut. His gaze jumped momentarily to the wives sitting across the courtroom. Silence hung, yawned. At last he muttered, "I don't know." The lawyer nodded brusquely. "No further questions, Your Honor." The chamber appeared to sigh as a whole as Kody came down. The judge called for a recess, and at once murmurs erupted in the room. Others wrote notes frantically, while others whispered with eyes wide with wonder. Kody came back to the defense table. His lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently. Kody nodded slightly, though his eyes remained forward, a crease etched between brows. The cross-examination was over, but its impact felt indelible, something that wouldn't go away, even after the trial itself was over. With individuals moving toward the doors, tension did not dissipate. It flowed into the halls, brought along with them. "The court will reconvene in 15 minutes. The bailiff's voice boomed over the agitated rustle of motion. Slowly, Kody stood up, smoothing the front of his suit jacket. His attorney briefly rested a hand on his arm, mouthing, "Let's get some air." The moment they made their way out through the double doors of the courtroom, the storm burst loose. Camera flashes detonated like lightning, bursts of harsh white light. Reporters stood, packed in the hallway shoulder to shoulder like a crowd at an arena, voices shrill and unyielding. "Mr. Brown, do you believe today's testimony damaged your case?" "Kody, what do you have to say to Christine's remarks? Are you still communicating with your wives?" The barrage was relentless, one question piling on top of the next. Microphones prodded toward him like spears as fat black cables curled upon the marble floor like snakes. Kody remained silent. His gaze remained fixed straight ahead, his lawyer leading him through the pandemonium with a firm hand against his back. The acrid metallic smell of camera equipment blended oddly with the smell of coffee wafting from a vending cart, while the smell of printer ink from news packets hung in the air. All senses seemed more acute, enhanced by the intensity of it all. Past the flashbulbs, courthouse halls bore their own weight. The lighting here decreased, walls covered in tattered notices and yellowed postings on overfull bulletin boards. Clusters huddled in corners, lawyers in low tones, family members in hushed tones, clerks who hurried by clutching files tight against their chests. Wherever he looked, eyes followed Kody, some questioning, some critical, others simply fascinated by the drama that played out. Across the hall at the other end of the room, his wives remained segregated. Christine folded her arms tightly, her nodding to the words of her lawyer, a face set in determination. A few paces behind, Janelle sat on a bench, phone aloft like a shield, her attorney seated close beside her with a clipboard. Meri rested against a water fountain, a paper cup dangling in her fingers, eyes on the ground as the low voice of her attorney spoke beside her like a monotonous hum. Only Robyn glanced in his direction, but only briefly. Ringed by her legal staff in a close, murmuring clump, her look was nearly incidental. None of them were sitting together, none stood so near each other as to talk. The attorneys moved among them like chess pieces, orbiting in isolated corners. Kody's attorney grumbled with another member of the defense team, voices strained, a hand gesturing toward a pile of documents before a quiet shake of the head. In the other hall, Christine's lawyer underlined words in a binder. Janelle's attorney scrolled down an email, reading out to her. Robyn's lawyer gave clipped answers, saving strength for round 2 inside. Every group was its own island, separated by an unseen moat. Kody wandered over to a small window that looked out onto the courthouse steps. Out on the steps, a crowd huddled together under the humid summer sun, their signs waving with messages that competed in tone. Justice for the wives. Kody, we love you. Family first. Love and contempt. Support and disdain. All clashing in a dreamlike otherworldly chorus. For an instant, he considered stepping out there and speaking to them in person. But the lawyer's admonishment lingered. Don't say anything. Every statement you make out there can be perverted in here. So he remained frozen, quiet. quiet, observing the pandemonium behind the glass, his own image hauntingly reflected over the turmoil outside. 15 minutes of recess felt like both a blink and an eternity. The hallway hummed with life, yet time seemed to slow for Kody. His mind replayed the morning like a reel. Christine's firm voice, Janelle's blunt honesty, Meri's hesitant truths, Robyn's carefully measured answers, and finally, his own cross-examination. Each question had trapped him tighter, each missed chance to explain weighing heavier. It wasn't simply a legal battle anymore. The reality hit him hard. All the bridges connecting them to the life they had made together were no more. Burned. They were now on opposite sides, nothing but scorched earth between them. An open autopsy, he had heard the term used before. The tearing apart of something already lifeless opened for strangers to pick over piece by piece. That's precisely what this was. Their family's disintegration was not concealed behind closed doors. It was laid bare, picked apart, and lived on in court records. The idea left his mouth with a foul taste. Then, above the hum of voices, a bailiff's voice echoed, "All parties return to the courtroom." The hallway tension tightened like a rope being pulled tight. Attorneys collected files, jackets adjusted, skirts smoothed. Kody's lawyer nodded once at him. In tandem, they moved toward the courtroom doors, not as a family, but as adversaries in a trial that extended far beyond earth or currency. The double doors creaked open. Off in the distance, the ring of the gavel rang out again. Recess was at an end. The wait for the verdict had exceeded the trial itself, hours twisting out in stifling quiet. Closing arguments were made and last-minute objections were raised. The judge had deliberated long, studying each page of the evidence carefully. Now the only noise to be heard in the courtroom was the soft tick of the clock. Other than the occasional rustle of papers or the creak of wooden benches as people shifted themselves, silence hung about. All eyes remained glued to the big wooden doors at the back, all waiting for the judge's return. When finally the doors opened, the mood changed immediately. The bailiff's booming voice, "All rise!" Kody rose with the rest, shoulders set but obviously encumbered by unseen weights. His attorney stood at his side, clutching her legal pad, though there was nothing more to write. The judge appeared, black robe billowing as she walked to the bench, carrying a folder in her hand, slender, but holding the words that would determine the fate of months of struggle. "Please be seated." Benches and chairs creaked audibly as everyone seated themselves. Then, without introduction, the verdict commenced. Her voice was calm, rehearsed, the voice of a seasoned one delivering verdicts, though for those arrayed before her the gravity was anything but routine. In the case of Brown versus Brown et al., the court finds as follows. Kody never took his gaze off her face, but her face revealed nothing. That neutral mask where the next word might spell either disaster or deliverance. She started with property. Certain land would be reallocated, not in the configuration Kody had struggled for, but not entirely in favor of the other side either. A compromise, far from satisfying. And then finances. Bills and books were to be scrutinized by an independent auditor. Accounts Kody believed long buried would now be reviewed line by line. The tone was clinical, but the cutting edge was sharp. Reactions radiated around the room silently. Kody's lawyer appeared calm on the outside, though her fingers tightened around the pad. Christine maintained a firm gaze, expression unreadable but stance unbroken. Janelle breathed slowly, releasing years of strain from her body. Meri looked straight at the judge, never once breaking eye contact with him to glance over at Kody. Robyn's lips were compressed into a thin line, her eyes jumping nervously between Kody and the bench. There were hushed murmurs, raised eyebrows, a few frowns of disappointment, some pleased, others disappointed. Even though the court recognizes the special nature of the relations and agreements offered, the judge went on, its responsibility is to decide solely on the evidence and the statutes of this state. Today's decisions are final unless appealed. Final. The word rang in Kody's mind. This wasn't like domestic arguments that could tempered later, or disagreements mended over time. This was irreversible, carved in court documents, unshakable. When the judge concluded, her eyes scanned the room once more before she nodded to the bailiff. Court's in adjournment. The gavel broke sharply. No one stirred for an instant, as if the sound itself had locked up the room. Then slowly, individuals stood scooping up papers, ugging on coats. Cody paused a moment longer, gazing at the table in front of him. He had known all along there could be no clean win, no judgment that healed or redeemed. Now, with finality reached, he saw the real loss had been incurred long before the hammer came down. When he did stand, cameras waited outside the courtroom doors. The hallway flashed with light. "Cody, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think justice was served? Are you going to appeal?" He remained silent. His lawyer pushed ahead, his way made through reporters pushing for shots, eager to catch even a fleeting expression. Outside, the sun hit him as he walked onto courthouse steps, late afternoon sunlight making the stone radiate. The group had swelled. Some voices applauded. "We're with you, Cody, stay strong." Others taunted, "You got what you deserved. Justice for the wives." Signs flapped, cameras rolled, and the din crashed together into one unyielding rumble. Cody had his gaze fixed ahead, shoulders straining with the weight of the day, but never sagging. On the last step, something held him. Through the doors of the open courthouse, he saw the women who had been his whole world. They were separated now, lawyers between them, but for one instant their eyes locked on his. No one waved, no one called out. Just one beat of connection, and then it was lost. And with it came the reality TV finale that never was. On camera, the most vicious fights were tempered by confessionals and opportunity to twist the tale. But this was not television. This was court. And here the story concluded with the gavel. Regardless of the frustration, regardless of the hurt, the papers would be signed, the estate split, the books balanced. But what was lost could not be recovered in any court. Within the vehicle, the pandemonium muted behind tinted glass. The courthouse crowd and flashing cameras receded. Cody reclined, breathing as if it were his first breath of the day. He pondered all of it, the dinners, the fights, the laughter, the births, the weddings, the dream that they had once attempted to construct. And he understood that it hadn't been broken in one blast of treachery, but rather unraveled bit by bit, slowly, until there was nothing left to hold it together. The gavel had not just concluded a trial. It had shut the door on the final dainty glimmer of an intact Brown family.